In the modern world, the word mindfulness has become a household term. It is printed on magazine covers, recommended by therapists, and taught in workplaces and schools. People are turning to mindfulness for better sleep, stress relief, improved productivity, and emotional balance. While these outcomes are not wrong or unhelpful, there is a quiet danger in how far modern applications have drifted from what mindfulness originally meant in the early teachings of the Buddha. Mindfulness was never intended to be merely a tool for relaxation or a way to become more efficient in worldly pursuits. In its original context, mindfulness was part of a radical spiritual path that aimed at the complete liberation of the mind from suffering. It was not about feeling calm, but about seeing reality clearly. It was not about self-improvement, but about the dissolution of the illusion of a fixed self. To practice mindfulness in the way the Buddha taught is to walk a path that leads not to comfort, but to awakening. At the heart of this path lies a powerful framework known as the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. This is not just one technique among many. It is the very structure that the Buddha himself declared to be the direct path to freedom. In the early discourses, he made this statement with great clarity. This is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the right path, and for the realization of liberation. This statement does not describe a vague or abstract idea. It points to a precise practice, a system that can be lived and experienced in this very life. So what are these four foundations? They are the four domains of experience that mindfulness must be applied to if one seeks insight and freedom: the body, feelings, states of mind, and mental processes. These are not philosophical ideas or metaphysical speculations. They are the raw materials of our day-to-day existence. The body that breathes and moves. The feelings that rise and fall in each moment. The mental states that color our perception. And the inner patterns and teachings that either bind or free the heart. These are the fields in which mindfulness must work. But to truly understand the four foundations of mindfulness, we must begin by letting go of our modern assumptions. Mindfulness is not attention alone. It is not simply noticing things as they happen. In its full sense, mindfulness means a sustained, embodied, and wise awareness. It is the act of remembering the truth again and again in the midst of experience. It is a presence that includes clarity, discernment, and the intention to see things as they really are. When mindfulness is practiced in this way, it becomes the doorway to insight. The challenge for many is that we often approach meditation with expectations. We want to feel something profound, to enter into deep states of peace, or to escape our daily struggles. But the practice of mindfulness, as taught in this path, is not about chasing experiences. It is about turning toward life exactly as it is, and observing it without clinging, without pushing away, and without becoming lost in thought or reaction. This turning toward, this silent, sustained witnessing, is not passive. It is a powerful inner training that purifies the mind of its distortions and illusions. The four foundations of mindfulness are not four separate techniques. They are four windows into the same truth. They reveal different angles of the human experience, and each one has the potential to uproot delusion. When we contemplate the body, we begin to see it not as me or mine, but as a natural process, shaped by causes, constantly changing, and not under our control. When we contemplate feeling, we come face to face with how craving arises. We see how pleasant sensations give rise to wanting, unpleasant sensations to aversion, and neutral sensations to unconsciousness. In seeing this clearly, we begin to free ourselves from automatic reactivity. When we observe the mind, we start to recognize its moods and habits, not as who we are, but as passing states. The angry mind, the distracted mind, the joyful mind, all arise and pass like clouds in the sky. The more we watch, the less we are fooled into believing that the mind is fixed or personal. And finally, in contemplating mental objects, the patterns and principles that govern experience, we begin to see how the whole machinery of suffering operates. We see the hindrances that block clarity. We see the parts of the teaching that lead to awakening. We see, not through blind belief, but through direct perception. The path of the four foundations of mindfulness is not quick or easy. It is not a shortcut to bliss. It is a lifelong training that requires patience, effort, and courage. But it is also deeply human. It does not demand anything beyond your present moment experience. It does not require you to become someone else. It only asks that you turn inward with honesty and care and begin to observe the truth of your own mind and body. In this observation, something profound begins to shift. The old stories lose their grip. The sense of separation begins to dissolve. And slowly, a deeper freedom emerges, not the freedom of getting what we want, but the freedom of not being bound by craving at all. This is why the Buddha called it the direct path, because it does not ask us to go elsewhere. It does not point to a God, a heaven, or a metaphysical doctrine. It points to this very body, this very mind, this very breath, and says, here is where the path begins. Here is where it ends. In the teachings that follow, we will explore each of the four foundations in depth. We will look at what it means to contemplate the body, to investigate feeling, to observe the mind, and to reflect on mental objects. But more than that, we will learn how these practices work together, not as isolated exercises, but as parts of an integrated whole. This is not just about techniques. It is about learning how to live in a way that supports insight, clarity, and the ending of suffering. The truth is simple, but not easy. We suffer because we do not see. We cling because we do not understand. The four foundations of mindfulness offer a way to begin seeing clearly. They offer a mirror that reflects the truth of our lives without distortion. And in that reflection, if we are willing to stay with it, freedom becomes possible, not as an idea, but as a lived experience, available here and now. This is the invitation, to turn toward the present moment with clarity, to explore the truth of our own being, to walk the path, one breath, one step, one moment at a time, and to discover, not through belief, but through direct experience, that liberation is not far away. It is already here, waiting to be seen. When we begin to practice mindfulness, the body is often the first and most accessible foundation. It is immediate, tangible, and ever-present. Unlike thoughts or emotions, which can be slippery and abstract, the body offers a stable and grounding field of awareness. It breathes, it walks, it sits, it aches, it moves, all without needing us to believe in anything or understand any philosophy. The body is where the practice begins because it brings us into direct contact with the present moment in a concrete and unmistakable way. Yet we rarely live in the body. Most of our daily lives are spent in the mind, in planning, remembering, fantasizing, worrying, comparing. The body continues its work silently in the background, breathing and balancing and digesting, but our attention is often far away. To contemplate the body in mindfulness is to reverse this habit. It is to return to the actual, lived experience of being alive, not as an idea, but as sensation, movement, and presence. One of the most foundational practices is observing the breath. This is not about controlling the breath, shaping it into something spiritual or peaceful. It is about tuning into the natural rhythm of the body as it inhales and exhales. The breath is always here. It doesn't require our effort. It reveals the changing nature of the body. Each in-breath arises and vanishes. Each out-breath fades away. Over time, we begin to notice that the breath is not me. It breathes by itself. We are not commanding it to happen, and we cannot make it stay. It becomes a gentle teacher of impermanence. But breath is just the beginning. As mindfulness deepens, we begin to observe the entire body in movement and stillness. We pay attention as we walk, as we stand, as we sit, as we lie down. These are not complicated actions, but they are deeply revealing when seen with clarity. In walking meditation, for example, we bring our awareness fully to the sensation of the foot lifting, moving, touching the ground. We feel the contact with the earth, the balance shifting, the coordination of muscles and bones. Every step becomes a moment of mindfulness. We are not walking to get somewhere. We are walking to know that we are walking. Even simple gestures, reaching for a cup, turning the head, opening a door, become opportunities for awareness. There is no need for anything dramatic. The body, when watched closely, is full of wisdom. It shows us how movement arises, how intention is followed by action, how balance is maintained moment by moment. And it reveals how even these simple actions are subject to constant change. What we once did easily, we may struggle with in old age. The body ages, gets sick, and dies. This is not a pessimistic truth. It is a liberating one when truly seen. One powerful part of the body contemplation practice is becoming aware of the inner components of the body. Traditionally, this includes reflecting on the many parts that make up this physical form: skin, flesh, bones, organs, blood, bile, mucus, and so on. This is not meant to inspire disgust, but to gently undo the habit of viewing the body as beautiful, permanent, or self. When we reflect in this way, we begin to see that the body is a biological process, not a personal possession. It is not mine in the way we often assume. It is a collection of parts, all working in silent cooperation, dependent on causes, and vulnerable to decay. Some ancient teachings even encouraged the contemplation of the body in decay, reflecting on corpses in various stages of decomposition. While this might seem morbid to the modern mind, the intention is deeply compassionate. These reflections were designed to help monks and meditators cut through the illusion of permanence and attractiveness that clings to the human form. In seeing clearly that the body is subject to death, the mind lets go of grasping. It stops clinging to what cannot be held. And in that letting go, there is peace. But this practice is not about rejecting the body. It is about seeing it clearly. The body is not something to escape or transcend. It is a profound teacher. It shows us how life moves, how change is constant, how control is an illusion. It grounds us in reality. And as we bring mindfulness to the body, something begins to shift. We begin to notice how much of our suffering comes not from pain itself, but from resisting it. We begin to see how discomfort arises, changes, and passes. We learn to stay, to remain present even when the body is tired, sore, or restless. Through this, equanimity is born. We no longer panic when discomfort arises. We no longer grasp after pleasure with desperation. We see the body for what it is: a vehicle, a process, a temporary gathering of elements. And with this seeing, the heart softens. Fear begins to fade. Clinging begins to loosen. We do not have to believe in any doctrine to experience this. We only have to look directly, patiently, and honestly at our own experience. Over time, as mindfulness of the body deepens, a new relationship begins to emerge, one rooted in compassion and care. We treat the body not as an object to conquer or decorate, but as a living system worthy of attention and respect. We listen to its signals. We sense when it needs rest, nourishment, movement, or stillness. We stop using the body as a tool for egoic display, and instead live in it with presence and gratitude. This is not always easy. The body carries old traumas, cultural messages, and emotional residues. As we become more mindful, we may uncover layers of tension, fear, shame, or numbness. This too is part of the path. Mindfulness does not mean we feel good all the time. It means we are willing to feel fully, without turning away. The body becomes the doorway through which we reconnect with our humanity, with all its vulnerability, beauty, and depth. In this way, the contemplation of the body is not a dry or clinical practice. It is a sacred returning, a homecoming. We come back to ourselves, not as an idea, but as a living reality. We come back to the breath, to the sensations, to the heartbeat, to the ground beneath our feet. And in that return, we begin to remember something essential: that life is here, now, always available, and always changing. The body does not lie. It does not pretend. It only reveals. When we are present with it, moment to moment, we begin to live more truthfully. We stop chasing after perfection. We stop running from discomfort. We simply arrive, again and again, in the only place where awakening is possible: this moment, this body, this breath. This is the gift of the first foundation. It is not a step to be completed and discarded. It is a lifelong companion on the path. Whether we are beginners or advanced meditators, the body remains a faithful teacher. Its lessons are simple but profound. Be here. Stay close. Let go. Begin again. In the language of practice, these are not just instructions. They are the rhythm of freedom. If the body grounds us in the present moment, then feeling reveals the hidden momentum behind much of our suffering. In the early teachings, Feeling does not mean emotion as we commonly understand it, not sadness, anger, or joy. Feeling refers to the basic tone or flavor of each experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Every moment we live, every sensation we encounter, is accompanied by one of these three. And while they may seem insignificant, they are in fact the fuel that drives the entire cycle of craving, clinging, and becoming. To contemplate feeling is to begin noticing how we react to experience before thoughts even form. The contact between the senses and the world, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental perception, always gives rise to a feeling tone. It is immediate and automatic. We see a bright flower and feel a subtle pleasure. We hear harsh words and feel a flicker of discomfort. We sit in a neutral room and feel neither pleasure nor pain. These tones arise before stories, before opinions, before decisions. They are the first wave, and they shape everything that follows. Why is this important? Because it is through feeling that craving takes root. A pleasant feeling gives rise to wanting, we want more of it. An unpleasant feeling gives rise to aversion, we want it to stop or go away. A neutral feeling often gives rise to ignorance. We ignore it, drift off, or become dull. In this way, feeling becomes the pivot point around which the wheel of suffering turns. If we are unaware of it, we are dragged by it. But if we learn to observe it mindfully, the cycle begins to break. This is the power of the second foundation. It asks us to stay with each experience long enough to see its feeling tone clearly. This might sound simple, but in practice it requires great sensitivity. When we sit in meditation, for example, we begin to notice subtle shifts. The breath feels warm and pleasant. The knee starts to ache and becomes unpleasant. A thought arises, and we feel a sense of neutrality or mild discomfort. We do not push these feelings away, nor do we chase them. We simply name them inwardly: pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And in doing so, we bring them into the light of awareness. Over time, we begin to recognize patterns. Perhaps we notice that whenever a pleasant feeling arises, we tighten, trying to hold on to it. Or that whenever an unpleasant feeling appears, we flinch or contract. We see how restlessness arises from a desire to escape discomfort, and how boredom comes from failing to notice neutral feelings. In all of this, the practice is to observe, not to control. We do not try to change the feeling tone. We do not force ourselves to like pain or dislike pleasure. We simply see it, clearly and steadily, and watch what the mind does with it. What begins to emerge is a space, a gap, a pause between stimulus and reaction. This gap is not just psychological, it is profoundly spiritual. In that space, we are no longer prisoners of our conditioning. We begin to experience the freedom to choose, not to repress or suppress, but to see and respond wisely. A pleasant feeling arises. We notice the pull toward clinging, and we soften. An unpleasant feeling arises. We notice the impulse to escape, and we stay. A neutral feeling arises. We resist the drift into dullness, and we remain attentive. This is how craving loses its power. In this foundation, we also begin to understand that feelings are not reliable guides to truth. Just because something feels good does not mean it is good. Just because something feels painful does not mean it is bad. The path of awakening often involves discomfort, facing fear, letting go of attachments, enduring restlessness. And pleasure can be deceptive, leading us into distraction, indulgence, or complacency. When we learn to observe feeling without reacting, we start to live from a place of wisdom rather than habit. One of the most liberating insights that arises through this practice is the impermanence of feeling. No matter how intense a feeling may seem, whether pleasure or pain, it will change. It must change. This can be a great relief. When pain arises, we learn to wait and watch. We no longer panic or resist. We trust that it will pass, and usually it does. When pleasure arises, we enjoy it with gratitude but without clinging. We no longer demand that it stay. In this way, equanimity begins to grow, not indifference, but a balanced heart that is neither shaken nor seduced by experience. Contemplation of feeling also teaches us humility. We begin to see how often we are moved by forces beneath the surface. Our opinions, our judgments, our decisions, so many are shaped by unseen feelings. We justify them with logic, but they often begin as a subtle leaning toward or away. By seeing this, we do not become cynical. We become honest. We stop pretending that we are in control of every reaction. We admit our humanity, and in that honesty, compassion arises for ourselves and for others who are also swept along by unconscious reactions. This practice is especially powerful in daily life. We don't need to be on a cushion to observe feeling. In fact, every moment is filled with opportunities. Eating a meal, we notice the pleasant taste and the desire for more. Hearing a sound, we notice the irritation or delight. Receiving a text message, we notice the pleasure or disappointment that arises. In all these small moments, mindfulness brings us back. We step out of reactivity and into presence. We see how the mind moves, and we begin to move with it more skillfully. Ultimately, the contemplation of feeling is about freedom. Not freedom from pain, but freedom from being ruled by it. Not freedom from pleasure, but freedom from being addicted to it. It is the freedom of not needing to escape or grasp. The freedom of standing in the center of your experience, awake, clear, and steady, as life moves through you. This foundation invites us to ask, can I feel what I'm feeling without trying to fix it? Can I stay with this moment without wanting it to be different? Can I simply know, in my bones, that this feeling, whatever it is, will pass? If the answer is yes, even for a moment, then we have touched something profound. We have begun to live not from impulse, but from awareness. We have stepped onto the path, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. We have begun to wake up. As mindfulness deepens through the body and feeling, a more subtle and powerful foundation begins to unfold, the contemplation of the mind itself. If the body is the ground and feeling is the wind that moves us, then the mind is the sky that holds it all. It is vast, dynamic, and always in motion. And yet, despite its central role in our experience, we often do not see it clearly. We are entangled in it, identified with it, swept away by its moods and stories. We do not recognize it as an object that can be observed. We think we are the mind, but this practice begins to reveal otherwise. To contemplate the mind is to turn our awareness inward and simply notice the quality of the mind in the present moment. Not what the mind is thinking, but how it is functioning. Is it contracted or open? Is it restless or still? Is it filled with desire or free from it? Is it burdened by anger, fear, or doubt? Or is it clear and balanced? In this practice, we begin to observe the mental climate, the emotional texture, the mood and tone of consciousness itself. At first, this may seem abstract, but with careful attention, we begin to see that the mind has states, just as the body has postures. The mind can be sharp or dull, tense or relaxed, agitated or at ease. These states are not invisible. They color everything we perceive. When the mind is clouded by anger, the world looks threatening. When the mind is soaked in desire, even small pleasures become obsessions. When the mind is still and clear, everything appears with fresh simplicity. To recognize this is to begin freeing ourselves from the illusion that we are these mental states. We realize, this is a mind with anger, not, I am angry. This is a distracted mind, not, I am lost. The shift in language points to a deeper shift in identity. This is where the true strength of mindfulness begins to shine. When we observe the mind directly, without judgment, we stop being pulled around by it. We develop what could be called a second attention, a knowing that knows the mind. The mind is thinking, but there is also a knowing of the thinking. The mind is afraid, but there is also a knowing of the fear. This knowing is not cold or distant. It is intimate and gentle. It does not try to control or fix what arises. It simply sees, and in the seeing, the grip of the state begins to loosen. One of the most liberating aspects of this practice is the growing realization that all states of mind are impermanent. No matter how strong or overwhelming a mental state may seem, it changes. A storm of anxiety may rage, but eventually it breaks. A wave of inspiration may lift us up, but eventually it fades. Through direct observation, we begin to trust this truth. We no longer believe that how we feel now is how we will always feel. We stop building identities around passing moods. We learn to say, this is here now, and it too shall pass. And this applies to so-called positive states as well. We might feel joyful, concentrated, or uplifted in meditation. And the tendency is to hold on to these states, to make them mine, and try to repeat them. But the practice teaches us not to cling even to the beautiful. The mind moves like the weather, sometimes clear, sometimes cloudy, and we learn to watch with equanimity. We do not chase the clear sky, nor do we despair in the fog. We remain steady, knowing that all conditions are subject to change. Contemplating the mind also reveals our deeper habits. We begin to notice which mental states return most often. Perhaps we see a habit of worry, or a tendency toward self-judgment. Perhaps the mind often slips into daydreaming or resentment. Rather than being discouraged, we treat these observations as gifts. They show us where the work is. They point to the patterns that need care, understanding, and transformation. And over time, these patterns begin to lose their automatic power. We no longer follow them blindly. We see them arise. And in the space of mindfulness, we make different choices. It's important to understand that this kind of observation is not about self-criticism. We are not watching the mind in order to judge it. We are watching to understand. We are developing intimacy with our own consciousness, not to fix it, but to free it. The moment we bring awareness to the mind, something begins to shift. Even a small moment of recognition, this is a mind filled with restlessness, can open the door to calm. Awareness itself is the medicine. In daily life, this practice is both subtle and transformative. When we are driving, working, or in conversation, we can pause and check in. What is the state of mind right now? Are we present or distracted? Are we open or defensive? This simple question, asked again and again, builds the habit of awareness. And with that awareness, we begin to act from clarity rather than confusion. As the practice matures, we begin to experience a deep disidentification from mental content. Thoughts no longer define us. Moods no longer possess us. We experience them, but we are not trapped in them. This does not mean we become passive or indifferent. In fact, we become more alive, more compassionate, more responsive, because we are no longer lost in the waves. We are standing in the ocean, yes, but with our feet on the ground. Eventually, this foundation opens the doorway to profound insight. We begin to see that the mind is not fixed. It is a process, not a thing. It is not a stable self, but a stream of changing conditions. This insight cuts deeply into the illusion of a solid me who thinks and feels. We see that what we call I is just a bundle of mental events, arising and passing in dependence on causes. And from this seeing, a vast freedom opens up, a freedom that does not come from changing the world, but from knowing the truth of our own experience. To contemplate the mind is to sit with the very heart of experience. It is to look directly into the mirror of consciousness and see it for what it is, radiant, restless, tender, wild, and ultimately empty of self. In this seeing, the burdens we carry begin to lighten. We no longer have to hold on to every thought, defend every emotion, or chase every high. We can simply be with what is, awake, present, and free. The final and most expansive foundation of mindfulness is the contemplation of mental objects, the patterns, categories, and teachings that shape how the mind experiences the world. Unlike the previous foundations, which focus on direct experience, the body, feeling, and mental states, this foundation invites us to bring clear awareness to the very architecture of the inner world. We begin to examine the nature of thoughts, perceptions, and intentions, not only as events that arise, but as signs pointing to deeper truths. In essence, this is the practice of seeing how the mind constructs its reality, and how that construction can either lead to bondage or liberation. To contemplate mental objects is not to get lost in abstract thought, but to observe the structures of the mind with clarity and wisdom. We look closely at how craving arises and how it fades. We notice the emergence of anger and how it burns, then dissolves. We recognize the presence of doubt, restlessness, and confusion, not as personal failings, but as universal mental tendencies. In doing so, we disarm their power. The light of awareness exposes these forces and weakens their grip. One of the key insights that arises here is the realization that much of what we take to be truth is actually constructed by the mind. We begin to see how the mind labels experience: good, bad, pleasant, painful, mine, not mine. These labels are not inherent in the experience. They are added by the mind based on memory, conditioning, and habit. When we observe this process, we begin to question it. Is that judgment true? Is that fear real? Is this desire necessary? We do not need to answer these questions intellectually. Simply watching the mind, ask them opens space for freedom. This foundation also encourages reflection on key teachings that guide liberation. We contemplate the hindrances, desire, aversion, dullness, restlessness, and doubt, not to resist them, but to understand their nature. When they are present, we acknowledge them. When they pass away, we notice the absence. We begin to understand the conditions that give rise to these hindrances and how they fade when those conditions are not present. This is a deep training in cause and effect, not in theory, but in direct experience. We also bring attention to the factors that support awakening: mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, calm, concentration, and equanimity. These are not abstract ideals. They are actual qualities that can be observed and nurtured. When the mind is energized by clarity, when joy naturally arises from non-clinging, when calm begins to settle like a quiet lake, we learn to recognize and support these wholesome tendencies. We do not force them to arise. We create the conditions for them to grow. As this foundation deepens, we begin to reflect on the impermanent nature of all phenomena. Nothing that arises in the mind stays the same. Every thought, emotion, and sensation passes, whether pleasant or painful, wholesome or unwholesome. By watching this constant flow, we loosen our grip on identity. We see that we are not the thoughts, nor the emotions, nor the habits of mind. We are the awareness that knows them. This shift in perspective can be subtle at first, but it becomes the doorway to deep inner freedom. Another key insight that arises here is the recognition of unsatisfactoriness, the sense that clinging to mental objects never brings lasting peace. We might grasp at pleasure, or cling to identity, or try to hold on to a belief, but eventually, we see that even the most cherished concepts cannot protect us from change. Everything we hold on to breaks apart. This is not a cause for despair, but for liberation. When we stop clinging, we stop suffering. We learn to rest in the present without needing it to be different. Finally, we begin to see that all things are empty of a fixed self. The body changes, feelings change, the mind changes, and even our most cherished beliefs shift over time. What we called I yesterday is not the same today. This is not an intellectual idea. It becomes obvious through direct observation. When we look at experience without clinging, we find no solid core. There is just awareness and the objects of awareness, arising and passing like waves on the ocean. This realization is not cold or nihilistic. It is deeply freeing. When we stop building a false identity around fleeting experiences, we begin to taste the peace that comes from letting go. The contemplation of mental objects also includes reflection on the path itself. We observe how right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration are not just ethical principles. They are living tools. When we apply them, the mind becomes more balanced, more spacious, more awake. When we stray from them, confusion and suffering return. This is not about morality in the usual sense. It is about cause and effect. When we live with integrity and clarity, the path unfolds naturally. In this sense, the fourth foundation is not just about observing the mind. It is about understanding the mechanics of awakening. We are not practicing mindfulness for its own sake. We are practicing to know reality directly, and that knowing, when it becomes complete, uproots the causes of suffering. This is the great promise of the path, not a belief, not a philosophy, but a direct experience of liberation. Bringing this foundation into daily life is both practical and profound. We begin to notice when the hindrances arise. Here is craving. We begin to support wholesome states. Now there is joy, let it deepen. We examine the stories we tell ourselves and ask, is this true? Is this useful? We reflect on impermanence in small moments. This emotion will pass. This thought is already gone. Over time, these simple reflections change the texture of our life. We become less reactive, less defensive, more present, more loving. The mind becomes a space of clarity, not confusion. To contemplate mental objects is to become an explorer of the mind. We are not trying to control the ocean. We are learning to sail it with wisdom. We are not denying the waves. We are learning to recognize their patterns and ride them skillfully. The teachings are not imposed from outside. They become the inner compass that guides us home. Ultimately, this fourth foundation is the culmination of mindfulness. It draws upon all that has come before: awareness of the body, clarity about feeling, understanding of the mind, and invites us to see the whole field of experience as it truly is. Nothing excluded, nothing grasped, nothing resisted. Just a clear seeing of the arising and passing of all things. In this seeing, wisdom grows. In this seeing, the heart opens. In this seeing, the path becomes clear. At the end of the journey through the four foundations of mindfulness, we are left with something far greater than just refined concentration or sharp observation. What truly emerges is a transformation in how we relate to ourselves, to others, and to life as a whole. The practice is not about acquiring more information or developing a new set of beliefs. It is about cultivating a new way of being, one rooted in clarity, wisdom, and freedom. This path is deeply experiential. It begins by training the attention to stay anchored in the body, in the breath, in the immediacy of the present. But over time, it blossoms into something vast and luminous, a way of seeing the world that is no longer filtered through grasping, fear, or confusion. Mindfulness, as cultivated in this tradition, is not a passive state of watching. It is an active engagement with the truth of how things are. And when we see things clearly, we begin to live differently, not because we try to, but because the delusions that bound us begin to unravel. The fruit of the practice is not found in any single moment of meditation or sudden insight. It is found in the gradual deepening of awareness, in the steady softening of resistance, and in the increasing sense of spaciousness around experience. Suffering no longer owns us in the same way. When pain arises, it is seen clearly, known directly, and allowed to pass. When joy arises, it is received with gratitude, not clinging. When confusion arises, it is not feared but observed. This shift, from reaction to presence, is the beginning of inner freedom. One of the most profound changes that takes place through mindfulness is the dissolution of the sense of a fixed self. We begin to see that what we used to call I is actually a flow of changing conditions, sensations, thoughts, emotions, and habits. None of these are stable, and none of them are truly me. There is thinking, but no thinker. There is emotion, but no permanent owner of the emotion. This realization is not abstract. It becomes obvious as the mind settles and sees experience without clinging. And as this insight matures, fear begins to dissolve, because fear depends on the belief in a solid self that needs protection. Freedom, then, is not found by escaping life, but by seeing through the illusions that distort it. We stop trying to control every moment, and instead begin to trust in the natural unfolding of things. This does not mean passivity. It means wisdom. We respond to life with care, but without the heaviness of ownership. We engage with others from a place of compassion, not ego. We live from presence, not projection. And this shift changes everything. Another fruit of the practice is the deep cultivation of compassion. As we begin to see the nature of our own mind, the arising of craving, the grip of fear, the burden of delusion, we become less harsh toward others. We realize that every being is struggling with the same forces. The same mind that makes us suffer lives in them too. From this understanding, a natural tenderness arises. We do not have to force kindness. It flows from wisdom. We see the fragility of life, and our heart opens, not just toward those we love, but toward everyone, even those who cause harm. This compassionate view does not mean accepting injustice or turning away from pain. Rather, it means acting from a place of clarity, not reactivity. We do what is needed, sometimes fiercely, sometimes gently, but always with the understanding that no one is outside the flow of cause and effect. Even those we judge are conditioned by their pain, their past, their blindness. When we see this clearly, our actions become more skillful. We do not add hatred to hatred. We bring light into darkness. The four foundations of mindfulness also cultivate an inner stability that cannot be shaken by external conditions. This is one of the great fruits of the path. When things go well, We do not get lost in excitement. When things fall apart, we are not crushed. We meet joy without clinging. We meet sorrow without despair. This balance, this equanimity, is not indifference. It is wisdom in action. It is the ability to stay grounded in the truth, no matter what arises. It is the freedom of not needing the world to conform to our preferences. From this stable ground, deeper states of meditation and insight naturally unfold. The mind becomes more collected, more radiant, more still. Concentration deepens, and the mind begins to taste a joy that is not dependent on anything outside itself. This joy is quiet, subtle, and deeply nourishing. It is the joy of simplicity, of presence, of letting go. And from this foundation, insight grows even more. The nature of reality becomes clearer. All things are impermanent. All clinging brings suffering, and all phenomena are empty of fixed identity. As this understanding ripens, something remarkable begins to happen. The mind lets go, not through effort, but because it finally sees that there is nothing to hold on to. The grasping releases. The aversion fades. The confusion lifts. And in the space that remains, there is peace, not as an idea, but as a lived reality. This peace is not dependent on conditions. It is the natural state of a mind free from bondage. This is the fruit of the path. And yet, this freedom is not the end. It is the beginning of a new way of living, one grounded in wisdom, compassion, and presence. We no longer live for ourselves alone. We become a light for others, not by preaching, but by embodying the path. Our presence becomes a refuge. Our words become medicine. Our silence becomes a teaching. This is the invisible transmission of the Dharma, not through texts or rituals, but through the quiet power of a mind that has been purified by truth. This is the promise of the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. Not a promise given by a teacher, not a reward offered by a god, but a possibility revealed by direct experience. Anyone who walks this path, with patience and sincerity, can taste its fruit. Anyone who is willing to look deeply into their own mind can begin to unravel the roots of suffering. This is a universal truth, available to all, bound by none. In this light, mindfulness is not just a practice, it is a revolution that begins within and radiates outward. It is a return to our original clarity, our unshakable peace, our boundless compassion. It is the awakening of the heart from its long sleep. And so the practice continues, not as a duty, but as a joy, not as a struggle, but as a homecoming. With each breath, we return. With each step, we remember. With each moment of awareness, we come closer to the truth that has always been waiting, not somewhere far away, but here, now, within. This is the path. This is the fruit. This is freedom.